Morning, YouTubers. I got a call last night from Luke Palioka, and I didn't hear it. My phone was off or something, and I saw that he'd left me a message. So he said, "You see what happened on? You must. I just called to see if you were all right after what happened." And I thought, what is he talking about? So I called him up, and he told me that Rusty Acres died. I guess now it would be day before yesterday. He went out apparently riding his Harley Davidson to work, and something happened. But Rusty's gone, and many of you knew him, many of you didn't. Rusty lived in a place we used to call it the swamp, because he didn't have the internet, but he did have alligators and things of that nature. But Rusty showed up at my house one day with a Plymouth Valiant on a trailer behind his Dodge truck, and he had just driven it from somewhere out west where he had bought it, and we weren't. He had said something about he might drop by on, messaging me, but days and days went by before he actually got here, which is kind of like the way Rusty rolled. He would take off on a trip driving a $600 van, and on the way he'd blow the alternator out and then have to fix that, and then once he got there he'd have built a 25-foot long trailer out of two camper frames welded together with 8 axles or 8 tires, and then he'd load up enough weight to put in he'd load up like a thing was a 40-foot trailer truck, sky high with everything you can imagine, and then blow out 5 or 6 tires on the way back home. And he was just an adventurous guy, and he was never afraid to take on anything. In fact, he used to freak me out a little bit because he would just take off going across country. And a good example is there's a lot of legendary things about Dave, but he bought a Crosley. I actually went and bought it for him, and he came to my house and picked it up, took it back to Florida. And at a certain point, he jumped in the Crosley and drove it to Indiana to visit Cutworm. No, that ain't right. He drove it to Ohio, to Wason, to the big Crosley meet they have annually. I think somewhere in the trip he did make it out to Cutworm's house. And then he showed up at my house the night of the big car show in Elberton, and I think altogether he'd driven something like 2,500 miles, 2,700 miles or something like that by the time he drove all over the country in a Crosley. Now, anybody that knows anything about Crosleys knows that getting in a Crosley and driving to the grocery store is risking your life, and this guy drove one all over the country. When I was moving down here from Maine, he showed up at my house. We loaded up 2 Crosleys and a Crosley refrigerator, and I don't know what all else. He just loaded that thing down and took that thing home. And after I'd gotten in the big flood, I don't know how many of you even know about the big flood, but I got in a big flood during a hurricane in New Jersey on the way to Georgia, and one lonely farmer had to come out and pull me out of the river. And I wound up leaving a bunch of stuff at one lonely farmer's house, and one of the things I left was that rat rod right there. So Rusty Acres came up, and we drove to New Jersey, and he drove my old Dodge truck with that rat rod on the back of it. And the Dodge truck had something akin to a blown head gasket after having been in the flood. Even though one lonely farmer fixed it, it still had issues, and we couldn't get over 45 miles an hour. And I put I bought two CB radios. I put one in that in my car, and I put one in that old Dodge truck, and we hauled that thing home. Couldn't get over 45 miles an hour, and if you can imagine leaving New Jersey and driving down the interstates through, you have to go down across the country to get to Virginia, and then you have to drive all the way across Virginia, and then you have to go south on 77 down to Charlotte, and then, and driving 45 miles an hour or no faster than that, with trailer trucks zooming by you and blowing their air horns. And at one point, the truck was overheating, and I was just ready to leave the whole pile of mess right there and go down to a used car lot and buy something and, just go home. And he was like, no, we can do this. Don't get excited. Calm down. We were buying these bottles of water that you could get at the gas station and pouring water in that old truck. And then we'd drive it till it overheated again, and we'd pour more water in the truck. And by the time we got down to Charlotte, we were both pretty exhausted, but we were having fun talking on those radios like I used to do back in the day when me and Mad Dog Bobby drove trucks, and we would go for hours and hours and hours just chitter-chattering on the radio and just completely lose track of time. And that's the way this was. It was like me and him, when we got to Charlotte, instead of staying on the interstate, we hit the back roads and drove them from there down to here. And it was dark, middle of the night, but we were just kind of leaned back, just talking to each other, driving along, having the best time of our lives, and it was amazing. There are so many amazing things. I almost feel like I could write a book about, write a book about my life with Rusty Akers, and I don't even think I knew him for more than just a few years. I was looking up. I actually made a playlist of this morning of videos of different things that we had done, and I was surprised that I when I met him wasn't all that long ago. So a few years. But anyway, it's 4:00 in the morning, and I'm awake, and you YouTubers that knew Rusty would want to know that he was riding his Harley to work last night, and something happened, and he died in a crash. But you would want to know that, and you would want to know, well, you would, I don't know what to say about Rusty. Unless, if you didn't know him, it's hard to understand the kind of person he was. I know he was he went up to see George last time he went to Wasan, but he would drive out to Cutworm's house and drag home something or take something out there. Or I think one time he went to Ohio or Tennessee or someplace and bought a Plymouth, and then drove that Plymouth to Alabama, where he bought a trailer, and then he hooked a Plymouth, like a 47 Plymouth or something like that. And then he hooked the Plymouth to the trailer and drove that thing back to Florida where he lived. And he was just, who does that kind of thing? But Rusty did. And anyway, he's gone now. And I told his daughter in a message this morning, Rusty wouldn't have wanted to die from old age, and Rusty wouldn't have wanted to, get some kind of cancer and become disabled and have to be taken care of and waited on. Going out the way he did, riding his Harley. And, he told me one time, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm pretty sure this is true, he had some trouble with his legs there, and I think he had one knee replaced, and took him so long for that to get better. I don't know if he ever had the other one done or not, but he would limp around on his one good leg and sort of shuffle with the other one. And he told me that he got somebody to help him get on that Harley Davidson and rode that thing to Daytona. And when he got down there, he couldn't get off. He had to get people to help him get off the bike. I mean, that's just the kind of guy he was. There was no limits to what he would do, especially when it came to old cars and things like that. And he had no fear. He, like, if we took off down, he would do this. He would take off down the road, break down, fix it, keep going, break down, fix it, break down, fix it. That's why he didn't, that first time he came here, that's why we didn't think he was coming, because he said he was coming. He didn't show up, and then later he said, I'm this far, and then he didn't show up. And then one day he just drove in the driveway, and then he broke down out here, and he had to put a clutch in it or something. He broke down over here and had to do something else. But he wasn't afraid to just, heck, let's go. Jump in something with wheels on it, and let's just drive halfway across the country, and then pick up something else and drive some more and go get another car part or another piece of car or something. And people like that, I don't know if they're going to exist in the future, and if they do, I don't know what kind of form they're going to take. But you hear stories about these legendary old guys, like, oh, back in the day, this happened and that happened. Rusty was one of those guys that the legends are made up about, or savored, or saved, or told. And people say, "I didn't really happen." Yeah, it did. So anyway, I just made a playlist. I'm going to post this. I'm going to put the link to the playlist on it. And then if anybody wants to go back and look over the adventures of Rusty Acres, it'll be out there for them. And I don't know what else to say. I don't know if there is anything else to say. He was a good man. I'm glad I got to know him. He was a legend. I love y'all. And listen, on any day, any one of us could go. And I've come to realize that. So the idea that we have each other and that we can value each other is important. And don't let anything else get in the way of that. It means something. Okay, that's all I can think of to say. Take care of yourselves.